Please start.
Uh, uh, Good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon, students. Today's presentation will be on the audiolingual method. Now, in my sir, next slide, please. Um, in my second slide, I shall be showing you the origin of this audiolingual method and the roots of this method can be traced back to the language teaching programs devised in America during the Second World War. As you know, during the Second World War, it was felt necessary for people who had to go to distant countries for military campaigns to learn English quickly. So for that reason, this method was introduced to enable American people or American soldiers to learn, to master the language quickly. For that reason, this method was introduced in America. But this method actually developed in America in the 1960s and in 1970s. Now, as part of this method, language learning was considered a rigorous scientific discipline like linguistics and psychology. So it was felt that language learning is also a scientific discipline, which is almost like linguistics or psychology. And as far as this method is concerned, from the name you can very easily understand that the main focus of this method was to develop the learner's ability regarding communicative skills so that he can use the language in everyday discourse. And the focus was mainly on the skills of learning and speaking in the target language. Audiolingual, as you can very easily focus was on learning and speaking. So it was felt that language is something which has to be learned. Primarily, it is meant for speaking, and for that reason, it has to be learned. Now, in my next slide, I shall be showing you third slide, sir, please. Now, this method was based on 5 slogans which were enumerated by William Moulton of Princeton University. Now, these 5 slogans formed the basis of the audiolingual method, and these slogans were influenced by behaviorist psychology and structural linguistics. Now, these 5 slogans were as follows. Language is speech, not writing. Primarily, when we learn English, even today, we mainly think that when we learn English, we mainly think that we have to write in English correctly. But language is something which is to be spoken. So the stress should be always on the power of development of the power of speaking. So language is speech, not writing. A language is a set of habits. So you know the very famous proverb that good habits make a man and bad habits unmake a man. Similarly, so language is also a set of habits which have to be nurtured, which have to be developed, which have to be practiced daily. The third slogan is teach the language, not about the language. So we need to learn the language, we need to teach the students the language, our focus should not be to make the students knowledgeable about the language. Its primary purpose, language learning, the primary purpose of language learning is to apply the language in everyday discourse. So we need to teach the language, not about the language. The fourth slogan is a language is what native speakers say, not someone thinks they ought to say. So this is quite contrary to the direct method. The direct method focuses on the student's ability, development of the student's power to think, because it is felt that unless, as per the direct method, it is felt that unless the student is able to think, he cannot speak in the target language. But here, the focus is always on speaking, not on thinking. And the fifth slogan is that languages are different. Different languages have different set of rules, different set of different rules, different method of speaking. So languages vary, languages are different, and therefore different methods have to be developed, different skills have to be developed in order to master a language. Now, in my fourth slide, I shall show you, the next slide, I shall show you the main features of this language. So next slide, please. Main features of this language, of language learning. Now, hello, please. Hello, hello, hello. So can you hear me? Now, the first feature of this audiolingual method is that treatment of each language skill separately. Previously, it was felt that language is a unified whole, but here the language is divided into several departments, into several skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And all these skills have to be separately developed, have to be separately taught, have to be separately practiced and developed in order to enable a student to master any target language. Now, as I said, the focus is mainly on the skills of speaking and listening, in accordance with Moulton's first slogan: language is speech, not writing. So the student also first listening is very important. And from listening to the teacher, the student will be able to understand the language, and then he can be able to speak in the target language. Now, using the language, the main focus will be on the use of dialogues. Now, dialogues are the main feature of this audiolingual method. Now, it is the chief means of presenting language items. It provides an opportunity to practice, mimic, and memorize bits of language. So, through dialogue, through presentation of dialogues, through conversation, through everyday discourse, the student will master the language. He will be able to practice the language. He will mimic the teacher, and he will also memorize what he has learned from the teacher, bits of language from what he has learned from the teacher. Pattern drills form an important and essential part of this method. It is an important technique for language learning. So the students will be given different pattern drills, and he will have to practice it, memorize it, and use it in everyday discourse. For the first time, we find that the audiolingual method speaks of the introduction of a language laboratory, because it gives an opportunity to the student to mimic a model and memorize language patterns. The students can mimic a model. He can listen through tapes, listen to the target language through tapes and audio tapes, and he can then mimic the model or memorize the language patterns. Now, like the direct method, the audiolingual method also speaks of avoidance of the use of mother tongue, though not so rigidly. here the main focus is on direct assimilation of the target language through listening and then using the language through speaking. Now, the audiolingual method uses different techniques. Next slide, sir. Techniques used. Next slide, sir. Hello. So next. So techniques used, right. Now, in the first few stages, the concentration is on listening and on speaking skills, development of listening and speaking skills. So skills will be taught the first skill that will be taught will be speaking, then reading, and then writing. So language will be introduced through dialogues which contain common structures used in everyday communication and useful vocabulary. So the use of everyday speech and vocabulary, this will gain paramount importance in the audiolingual method. Now, the stress will be on memorization. Students will be asked to memorize different language patterns or structures. They will repeat the phrases and sentences of the dialogue. Learn from the teacher. In the smaller groups, will take the task of repeating the dialogues, the phrases, and the sentences, and then individual learners will memorize and repeat the phrases and sentences. So, memorization, repetition, listening, and mimicry. These are the essential techniques of learning the target language through audiolingual method. Now, dialogues will be memorized line by line. Learners will mimic the teacher or a tape, listen carefully to all the features of the target language, and they will also focus on pronunciation. Since speaking skills are of paramount importance, therefore the stress will be given also on learning the stress will be given on developing the pronunciation skill of the learners. Now, to consolidate what was learned, the learners will have to adopt and personalize the learning material to their own situation. It is not just blind memorization of the words and phrases. The learner will also personalize the learning material and use it according to his situation and circumstances. And for that, he will practice the drills orally, first in class and then individually. Now, this method does not give stress on rules. Some generalizations can be given, but no grammatical rules will be given to the students to memorize. Now, next slide. Now, reading and writing will be introduced in the later stages, and all reading material will be introduced orally first. Oral lessons will be given, and they will listen to the oral lessons, try to remember them, and then later on, writing will be introduced. Be confined initially to transcriptions of the structures and dialogues learned earlier. The students will be not given to write a paragraph straightforward in the initial stages. He will be first asked to write the transcriptions of the structures and dialogues that he has learned. Then in the later stages, he will be asked to write reports or compositions based on the oral lessons that he has mastered. And in the later stages, graded passages from literary texts will be introduced, but that will be at an advanced stage. Now, this is an easy way. Last slide, sir. Comments. Next slide, sir. Hello. So next slide, please. Comments. Now, this is an easy way to learn language without burdening the intellect. As we have found in the translation method, students are given tasks. They have to write, translate their thoughts into the target language. So it involves a lot of intellect. It involves a lot of load, burden on the intellect. But here, since language learning is made very easy, language learning will occur through listening and speaking. Therefore, it does not burden the intellect. Speaking is recognized as being primary to language learning. The main purpose of language learning is that it helps us to speak in the target language. So this method actually democratizes the learning of foreign language. Now, although this language, we do not follow this language totally nowadays, yet some of the features of this method are still used in classroom teaching of foreign and second languages all over the world. And as you can see that this method focuses mainly on the learner's speaking ability, because the primary purpose, it was felt that the primary purpose of target language, of learning the target language, is to help the student to speak in that language. So that's all from me for today. I hope you have enjoyed the lecture. If you have any questions, you are welcome to ask me. Thank you.